the year of the Shadster, apparently. So we get some video game and an anime to go with it. Also, he's in a blockbuster film, but who cares about that? Oh wait, I do! Now, I know I said I was going to review Transformers 1 right about now, but that's gonna have to wait because my family got the I exaggerate, but my runny nose did keep me up all Wednesday morning, unfortunately. But hopefully I'll get the chance to see Transformers soon. Anyway, I'm just gonna go into this episode now. Spoilers, obviously. You ready? Well,
Here we go!
we start with text. The space colony Ark. 50 years ago. And we see Maria and Shadow running away from the soldiers. Gee, that was fast. We're already there?
Shadow! Hurry! Hurry! You have to see this!
Huh?
Look! It's the Aurora Borealis.
Aurora Borealis!
I was not expecting that.
All right. That was pretty clever, Ian, making me think that they were running from Gun when it was actually something innocuous. Especially because we know as little as Shadow does about what Maria is doing. So here, I'll give you a cookie this time. Also, in case you were wondering like I was,
Yes.
Aurora Borealis can be seen from space. I didn't know that before. I mean, how would I know? I've never been to space.
You can only see them from certain latitudes down there, but up here, we can see the whole...
Maria,
Thank you. I just pushed it a little. That's all.
the low gravity here only keeps your condition in remission.
Oh my goodness. Finally! Maria's illness has been acknowledged in a piece of canon media. It is no longer trapped inside the Sonic Adventure 2 strategy guide, or instruction booklet, or wherever that information was divulged.
You should know better than to exert yourself.
I know. You're right. But when it comes to the beauty of the Earth, I can't help myself. I can't wait for the day when we can finally return.
I was created here. I don't know if there's a place for me on Earth.
Man. Actually, I've been so distracted by the pretty visuals that I've neglected to break down dialogue and character interactions. How about I fix that? Why is Maria excited? Well, this phenomenon doesn't happen here every day. She's clearly well read on it, and given that she's been up here for her whole living memory, she's definitely seen it before. So, I repeat, why is she excited? Because Shadow clearly hasn't seen the Aurora Borealis before. He's a new creation. There's so much he does not know, and much he's never experienced. Someone more concerned with their own well-being wouldn't overexert themselves when they have
Face aids.
just to show someone else some pretty light. It's clear the two are close, as if he were like a little brother to her, and she wants to share what little of the outside world she can with him while in the confines of the station. The idea of sharing whatever little piece of the world she can with Shadow is more important to her than being preoccupied with being as safe as possible. As soon as Maria faints, Shadow rushes to her aid. He scolds Maria, reminding her of the condition she has, not out of annoyance or to tell Maria off, but because he's concerned about her. He cares about her too, but their love for each other expresses itself in two different ways. Maria cares about Shadow's emotional well-being, his psychological and spiritual well-being. She wants him to grow into the best version of himself, someone who is fulfilled and can see the magic within everything in life. Whereas Shadow cares about Maria's physical well-being. He worries about her. He wants her to live a long life, one without her illness, one where she can go back to the Earth she loves, and he doesn't want her to jeopardize that for him. His mindset is more materialist in nature, but that's not a bad thing. He rightfully should be concerned. She's sick after all. But unlike some other stories I've consumed and dissected, this story is intelligent enough to know that there's nuance, that they both care about each other and neither's perspective is the wrong one. That would be completely missing the point because they're both right in their own ways. When the topic of Maria's love for Earth comes up, she says,
I can't wait for the day when we can finally return.
Now, I find this particular line to be fantastic due to its subtlety. We. At first, I found this one word choice odd. Shadow's never been to Earth before, and Maria knows this. You can't exactly return to a place you've never been. But then I thought about it for a bit. What does Maria mean when she says that line? She means she can't wait to be back on Earth, to go to the place she calls home. Obvious indication being that her saying we isn't her misspeaking, but her deliberately including Shadow. She wants him to see Earth, the place he's never been to, as his home too. I mean, it's obvious. Shortly after, Shadow says,
I don't know if there's a place for me on Earth.
Or maybe I'm just reading too much into this. Now, this is where I flex on how much I know about the lore and nitpick this line.
I don't know if there's a place for me on Earth.
Is a bit of a weird thing for him to say. In Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow has a flashback to a similar conversation he had with Maria during this time period. The two talk to each other about what they think the Earth is like, and eventually Shadow starts getting a bit existential. He relays an earlier conversation he had with Professor Gerald, where he told him his purpose in life was to help people with science. And Shadow tells Maria he doesn't know what his own purpose is, and he's often lost in thought thinking about it. But in this scene, his conclusion is that he believes there's a chance he'll find his purpose once he goes to Earth, which is the opposite of
I don't know if there's a place for me on Earth.
However, maybe the SA2 flashback occurs before this scene in Dark Beginnings and something happened in between those two scenes. It's probably that. I'm totally not going to bring this up again later. No siree. Also, finally, they said Earth and not Sonic's world. You have no idea how happy that makes me. Now, everything I've covered is
Good, great, awesome, outstanding, oh yeah!
If I knew nothing about this story or these characters, I now know everything I need to about these two and their relationship within a single minute, which is more than I can say about any of the characters in all 90 minutes of Lightyear. Now, I'm going to critique this scene still. I'm not just gonna blindly praise everything in this. The characters here are a wee bit verbose. It's a bit of a reoccurring issue in Ian Flynn's writing as of late.
Spatial anomaly that affected us seems to have left me in a digitized state, but those same energies are manifesting into some worrisome mutations for you.
You can only see them from certain latitudes down there.
The low gravity here only keeps your condition in remission. You should know better than to exert yourself.
Those sure are words you said just now.
However, in this case, I'd be nitpicking slightly. Maria's and Shadow's verboseness isn't a problem necessarily. They are both inquisitive and have a renowned scientist as their father figure. Not to mention the fact that all of their neighbors and fellow colonists are scientists as well. I also have always headcanon that the two spent an unhealthy amount of time with each other in the library, and the idea that in the present day, Shadow would be the kind of guy who would get annoyed by people saying library and the misuse of whom. So it makes sense to me personally that the conversations between the two could get wordy at times. It's nowhere near as bad as Tails randomly deciding to say a long string of words that he should be well aware his best friend of years and pseudo older brother wouldn't understand, while said big bro was clearly in physical distress for the purpose of trying to do a funny for the audience's sake. Also, the joke wasn't funny. And then suddenly,
Professor Gerald made me the ultimate life form. I should be the key to all manner of medicine, curing you.
And it was all going so well. First, this is the most blatant exposition to ever blatantly exposit. Second of all, that's one big non sequitur you got there.
I don't know if there's a place for me on Earth. Professor Gerald made me the ultimate life form. I should be the key to all manner of medicine, curing you.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to feel at home down there. Anyway,
I have angst about not being able to help you with your sickness!
I make no secret that I'm not a big fan of Ian's contributions to the canon as of late. But even I know he's not that bad of a writer to create such a non sequitur. This is just too confusing of a writing mistake. It immediately took me out of the story. It's like an entire section of the conversation was forcibly cut out, probably in some vain attempt to coerce me into buying a PlayStation 5 copy of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations. And I wish I was joking about that. The real joke's on them. I don't, never have, and will never own a PlayStation. Why would I want to invest in a $700 game console that's illiterate and can't stand up for itself without additional purchases? Also, this platform exclusivity deal thing is stupid because we all know within hours of the game's advanced launch that some data miner is gonna rip the raw video files of these extended scenes, or someone will just screen cap them before uploading them onto all social media platforms for anyone to watch, thus defeating the entire purpose, right?
No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
Also, I thought the purpose of these animations was to advertise the game, and not to be the reason to buy the game on PlayStation above all other platforms. Seriously, next time you try to gag content behind platform exclusivity, make it something that affects the game part of the game, like skins or new levels, and not video files. That's just stupid, guys. Not that I want chunks of game that are clearly done on release date to be locked behind any arbitrary walls. Anyway, back to the animation.
You and Grandfather are doing your best.
That's my Maria.
I'm just as happy to spend time with you here while you both research.
What was that? Emerl, the Gizoid from Sonic Battle? I remember him. He tore apart my heart, dang it. Whoa, that teleport dash.
Is that what chaos control is?
That robot was heading towards Grandfather's lab. Shadow, you have to save him.
Ooh, look at those gun soldiers.
They call me the glitch because I glitch the TVs out!
They have this whole jinxie effect going on here. Me likey. You should totally watch Arcane, by the way. The atmosphere!
I'll handle this. Just wait here. I'll be back, I promise.
Now, I'm not going to lie or sugarcoat what's about to happen. This fight between Shadow and Emerl is... How do I put this into words that won't upset anyone? Peak, that's the word. They're peakium, injected straight into my veins. And I'll break down the whole thing as I let out my inner Shad. Shadow rushes into the lab, giant tubes of sciencey nonsense flanking him on both sides. Emerl quickly spots Shadow, drops the professor, and rushes at Shadow. Shadow aims to punch at Emerl, only for him to slide under it. Both of them quickly recover before swinging roundhouse kicks at each other, the impact of their feet colliding causing a shockwave that shatters all the glass around them. The two dodge around each other before Shadow begins to swing towards Emerl, only for the robot to quickly analyze his move and reflect it back at him, causing their elbows to collide. And then Emerl swings again, only for Shadow to block. Shadow goes in for another punch, only for Emerl to copy Shadow's previous block. Shadow punches, block. Shadow punches again, and Emerl pushes his fist off course, giving him an opening to wind up a punch straight into Shadow's face, an attack he barely manages to repel. Emerl punches again, and because Shadow was still off balance, Emerl catches Shadow's wrist again, only for Shadow to pull away. Shadow then punches, only for Emerl to block again, but this time Shadow is ready for another punch, which he uses at full force, before following that up with an uppercut, and Emerl immediately responds by ducking and dodging around Shadow. They then begin to trade blows as they weave around each other's attack. Shadow charges up a spin dash, and Emerl immediately dashes backward before Shadow homing attacks Emerl, causing him to be knocked back. And look at that animation of Shadow uncurling in midair and landing. Perfection. Emerl then charges at Shadow, and he immediately dashes out of the way before holding down the D-pad. But oh no! Emerl did a
Successfully copied.
and begins to hold down as well. The two begin to crash and bump into each other, but Newton's law is in effect, so it causes them to bounce off each other. The two then curve their momentum back toward each other before uncurling, the two attempting to sweep kick each other. But Emerald's attack reaches first, forcing Shadow to redirect the momentum of his swing into an upward mid-air dodge. After they both land and recover, Shadow charges for another punch and Emerald dodges backward. Emerald then dashes towards Shadow before Shadow throws his next punch, forcing Emerald to duck and slide underneath before immediately charging up a whopper of a high kick that Shadow narrowly ducks under. Shadow retaliates with an uppercut that Emerald dodges. Shadow swings again and Emerald ducks, but Shadow quickly pops off another hit as Emerald is still crouched, and the robot blocks it before he redirects Shadow's fist over his own head before parrying and punching at Shadow. Shadow redirects Emerl's punch to the side, and then they both swing at each other simultaneously and their fists collide. But both of their momentum causes them to spin around, and Emerl uses this to his advantage and swipes at Shadow's head. Shadow ducks and the two charge punches, but Shadow swings first, leading to Emerl canceling his attack by ducking. Shadow does a left hook, and Emerl blocks before Shadow swings his left leg back and around, forcing Emerl's forearm block into his head. Emerl punches again, Shadow blocks, and Emerl grabs his arm. Shadow then pulls and forces Emerl's arm off to the side before ducking out of the way of Emerl's next punch. Shadow then blocks Emerl's two successive punches before swiping Emerl's arm away. He then catches Emerl's next punch in his hand and pushes it out of the way to make an opening to punch Emerl straight in the face. And that ends the fight. This whole thing happens over the course of 20 seconds, by the way. This is the point where I give massive props to Studio GIGGEX, the guys who made these animations. They deserve massive accolades and an even bigger paycheck, because everything here is visually stunning. Movement, posing, speed, squash and stretch, smear, cinematography, choreography, shading, lighting, particle effects, everything. Side note, everything is in 3D. This isn't 2D, this is stylized 3D. Not just the robot characters and vehicles like in Overdrive, everything is 3D. You can tell because everyone stays way too on model while moving around wildly. And also because the background and camera move at the full 24 frames a second while all of their characters' movement is on twos outside of the action scene, leading to this distinct Spider-Verse desync effect. Well, okay, maybe not everything is 3D. There are a lot of 2D overlay effects. Some of the minor characters are 2D, and I think the mouths are traditionally animated and composited on top of the 3D animation. They look really 2D, but maybe other mouths are part of the 3D models and they're just really well modeled, rigged, posed, and animated that I can't tell they're actually in 3D, which would be a massive, really cool achievement. However, again, I have one critique on this fight sequence. That first part, where Shadow's and Emerl's kicks collided, causing the tubes around them to shatter, got me excited. I was thinking that the whole fight was going to take advantage of the surroundings. It really was a missed opportunity to do more things with it. Imagine if the tubes released liquid onto the floor, necessitating both combatants avoid the spill. Imagine if the tops of the tubes were held up by the glass, and when they shatter, the lids would fall toward the ground, and both Shadow and Emerl would have to avoid them, or have one of them try to push the other underneath the falling objects, or attempt to use their abilities to redirect the trajectories of the lids to use them as projectiles. As is, the fight is still spectacular, but it could have been even better. I also love how the sequence perfectly conveys that Emerl can copy the moves of others without having Gerald shout some clunky exposition like,
Shadow, be careful, he can copy your move.
"Congratulations, Ian. You remembered how to show instead of tell." Anyway, what's next?
No, this isn't right.
Oh. What?
This is the Guardian Units of Nations.
Guardian Units of Nations? What? Ian, did you seriously retcon what GUN stands for? It's Guardian Units of the Nation. The Nation, as in singular. You know, because it's a defense force for the United Federation, aka totally not the United States, a singular nation? Please, Ian, don't tell me you changed the organization's name because brand synergy with the movies. Please don't tell me that is the reason.
This is the Guardian Units of Nations. Prepare to be boarded.
What's going on? First, more blatant exposition.
The soldiers, they storm the Ark, destroy all evidence, but it's too soon. It's happening too quickly.
Seriously, Ian, I just praised you for showing and not telling during the Emerl fight. And then what do? You immediately turn around and write the clunkiest info dump I've ever heard. Second, who is he talking to? The audience? Is he breaking the fourth wall? Okay, I'm being a bit disingenuous here. But seriously, why is he talking to himself in this way? I guess we now know for realsies that what we're watching is some sort of dream sequence and not 100% how things canonically happen. Especially because we know Shadow's memory can get a bit screwy at times. But has Shadow been conscious of his dreaming state this whole entire time? Or has he only just now become self-aware? If you're going to have Shadow exposit this kind of information, you'd think you'd write it in a way that confirms he is only just now realizing he's in flashback dream hybrid. Third thing, what is Gun? Why did they storm the Ark? What evidence did they want to destroy? What do they have to do with Shadow or Professor Gerald's research? What is even going on? Now, yes, all these questions do have answers, if you are looking for them, or if you have intimate knowledge of this franchise. Here's the problem. Who is this animated prologue for again? If you're a fan, you already know everything in here. There is no new information that you couldn't have learned before. So, it is admittedly cool to see moments we've only ever heard about being depicted on screen for the first time. The fans aren't the target audience for this, or at least they shouldn't be. Now, when I say this isn't for the fans, I'm not saying it in the sense the weirdos in Hollywood and the entertainment industry do. It's not for you, you knuckle-dragging regressive istaphobes. It's for modern audiences. No. When I say this isn't for the fans, I'm saying it in the sense this is for people who don't know about Shadow. People who've never seriously engaged with this franchise outside of the recent films that are all the buzz nowadays. Someone whose only knowledge of Shadow is of the meme. This is the opportunity to catch people's eyes with a visually spectacular animation that conveys the entirety of Shadow's tragic backstory concisely, in a way that is emotionally resonant in one easy to access place. This is the opportunity to prove the Shadow haters / misunderstanders wrong, and convince the non-Sonic fan populace that they actually like and can connect to this emo hog and want to buy his new game coming out this October. And also maybe watch that new John Wick the Hedgehog film coming out this Christmas. And I guess I'm going to show my hand for my overall thoughts here. If that was their mission statement, I don't think they've succeeded with flying colors, because there is a lot of important information missing here. I know I just finished praising everything to do with Emerl. I'm not taking any of that back, don't worry. But why is he here exactly? Okay, I know why he's here. He was on the Ark during this time period, so I'm not complaining it makes no sense for him to be here canonically. That's not my issue. No, my complaint is that Dark Beginnings has failed to explain anything about Emerl. While it is clear what his power set is by observing his actions closely, this animation fails to explain the who, what, why, and how of him. For all the uninitiated know, Emerl is some random robot thing that magically arrived at the Ark just now so he could blow stuff up for the giggles. The animation doesn't tell you that he was an old machine that Professor Gerald discovered in ancient ruins that he brought to the Ark to study. It doesn't tell you what relationship Emerl has with Shadow and Maria. It doesn't tell you that its programming is to blindly follow the orders of whoever is the most powerful. It doesn't tell you the reason he went berserk is because he got into contact with the Chaos Emerald. It does not tell you Gerald gave Emerl to Gun as a bribe in order to get them off his back about Project Shadow. It does not tell you that the people who foolishly gave the emerald to Emerl were the Gun agents trying to activate its latent warrior programming that Professor Gerald spent so long trying to overwrite. This feels like a big part of the story to accidentally leave out, if any, of this very important information to understanding what exactly is going on. Is in the PS5 extended version, I will scream into a pillow, because never have I seen this franchise shoot itself in the foot so hard before. In addition, we don't know why Emerl teleported to Gerald's lab. Gerald was his previous master. Not that Ian felt the need to tell you that. So why is he heck-bent on finding, harassing, and assaulting him? Did the gun soldiers order him to do this after they imprinted on him? Seriously, not even the wiki knows the answer to this one. This becomes even more baffling once you realize that we cut away from this fight and DeN dA GuUnsHiIPsES A-PiEr. So what did that Emerl fight have to do with anything? Why did we need to know that a robot blew up some stuff that one time? What does that have to do with the story we're currently retelling? Like, the short is about Shadow having a psychotic episode where he relives the moments leading up to the most terrible and traumatic thing that has ever happened to him. Presumably for the purpose of refreshing the pre-existing audience and crash coursing the newbies. We start establishing Shadow and Maria's relationship, how Maria is sick and can't live on the Earth she loves, and how Shadow was created as a cure for her condition. But because the research project is going nowhere, Shadow feels imminent guilt over the fact he can't help her. And then Emerl shows up, says it's Emerl in time. And then he emmers all over the professor and Shadow. And then some indeterminate amount of time later, a bunch of ships full of soldiers from an organization that's never been mentioned before now come on board to do very naughty things, leading to Maria's death, Gerald's insanity, and later death, and Shadow's 50-year imprisonment and trauma. So, what does Emerl have to do with any of that? I ask again, why is he here in this story? Once you start thinking about this from a structural storytelling standpoint, you'll begin to realize the only reason he is here is because, oh my goodness, it's the thing from the thing. Do you remember the thing from the thing? I remember the thing from the thing. This is yet another reoccurring issue with Ian Flynn's recent works. He feels the need to reference things constantly and for no reason. Wow, that thing looked like it was 10 times as powerful as Void from Sonic Shuffle.
Those sure are words you said just now.
Now, don't get me wrong, Emerl showing up here just because is a marked improvement over the characters in Frontiers, randomly blurting out franchise trivia unprompted. But this is still not great, especially because even an idiot like me can fix this problem by simply changing one line of dialogue. Literally, just have the soldier say over the speaker,
This is GON. We are shutting down the Ark due to the incompetence revealed after the Gizoid containment breach. You will come quietly with all your research in hand.
there, I fixed 2 issues at once. Now the Emerald incident isn't a random thing that happens without consequence. Now it's the inciting incident that led to the Ark shutdown. And because the speaker diegetically and naturally tells us what the soldiers are about to do, we don't need Shadow to exposit that information directly to the audience anymore. Ian, hire an editor, please. You really need one because this is just embarrassing. And yes, I am unironically suggesting that GUN should blame their own action of giving Emerl a Chaos Emerald on the scientists who told them not to. Real-world governments do that kind of nonsense all the flipping time. And for those wondering why I'd want to retcon the reason GUN shut down the Ark before massacring everyone, well, it's not really a retcon when there has never ever been a concrete reason as to why it happened other than government bad. I mean, the government is pretty terrible, that's true. But usually they'll justify their actions with a cover story. It doesn't have to make that much sense as long as no one in power questions it. I'd feel amiss if I didn't also mention that the episode fails to explain that Shadow's creation was commissioned by the UF and GUN. You know, just as an aside, Shadow was created to be a super soldier, was presumably fed some amount of pro-UF propaganda when he is impressionable, and then his country turns on him and kills everyone he loves and cares about, destroys his only home, and then locks him up in a basement vault for 50 years. I always felt that was a missed opportunity for some potentially rich characterization. Like, besides Shadow feeling sad about Maria's and Gerald's deaths, how does he feel about that? And how and why did he put those feelings aside when he joined GUN right before the events of Sonic 06? Wouldn't that make for a compelling, nuanced storyline and character journey? Maybe I'm thinking too hard about this. Clearly the people in charge don't put this much thought and effort into this franchise. Why should I? Look, all I'm saying is that the new coming audience should need to visit the wiki or crack open the $30 Encyclopedia in order to understand basic information about this story that could have easily been in this short. Okay, I've been ranting for a while now. What happens next in the episode? Shadow stumbles upon Gerald before seeing glitched up flashes of his fate. Gerald is chained to the chair,
Losing his mind, going insane.
He sits there helpless, inaudibly yelling about his revenge as a firing squad of 7 GUN officers take their aim at him and pull the trigger. Man, I guess I have to give them props for that. they actually showed that scene and even had them use realistic weapons and pull the trigger. That's more than I ever thought they'd do. I mean, we don't hear or see the gunshot, and we immediately cut away from the glitch, but still, man. Shadow then recovers from the flash before saying,
Professor, we must...
But as he walks toward him, Gerald glitches a room away, and then another and another. He's drifting further and further away. Shadow desperately sprints toward his father figure, scurrying faster and faster, pushing himself harder and harder. He reaches out, but it's too late. Now there's only loss and despair. Does Shadow blame himself for Gerald's loss of sanity and death? Man, I didn't think this prologue was going to inspire me to ask such a heavy question. Shadow then finds himself in a stormy void, surrounded by the tattered ruins of his world crumbling around him. And then he hears something. Lightning flashes, and we see Maria running as a silhouetted premonition in the clouds. Maria! And as Shadow helplessly drifts away, Black Doom appears, wrapping his clutches around him.
That was no mere nightmare, and it all began in view of the Ark.
The moon? It be shattered? They finally acknowledge that the moon is supposed to be blown up after 23 long years. Finally! I've won! Woohoo!
Could he have survived? No, that can't be. I need answers.
Okay. Here we go with the overall conclusions. This is, by far, Kirk's best performance as Shadow. Not that there was ever any competition. Personally, I still prefer David, Jason, and Ian, but if Kirk's performances from here on out are this consistently good, then he'll soon go from a distant fourth to a moderately, but not really that far away fourth. Though, personally, I still think he was miscast, and the perfect guy for the job is literally standing right next to him.
Do you have any idea how difficult it is to make something people actually want to buy? It's ridiculously hard!
And Stephanie Sheh? I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Is perfectly cast for Maria from what I've heard so far. She seems to be one of those VAs that crops up everywhere. Kid shows, anime dubs, video games. She was in Dustborn. I'll never escape that disaster, will I? She also voiced Xena. The Zeddy? Remember those guys? Weren't they the best? Like I said earlier, the visuals are fantastic, especially the ending. It's so surreal and artistically effective. It's so atmospheric and grand. You can instantly tell that it wasn't Ian's idea. I especially like the part where Shadow leaves Maria behind. It's like a visual metaphor or something. Like I gushed about earlier, I love how the short depicts the relationship between Shadow and Maria. All that's way above average for this franchise. And Ian's recent works in general. Also the music, mwah, chef's kiss. There is plenty of great stuff to praise here. But this episode is way too much of a mixed bag. I'm sorry. First of all, why is Professor Gerald Robotnik such a non-entity here? You would think that this would be the perfect opportunity to reestablish his relationship with Maria and Shadow, but in this, he's just the background scientist man who is Maria's Gramps, who is assaulted by a robot before losing his mind after his granddaughter's death and is executed by the deep state. Also, the audience is told he is desperately working on a cure for Maria and really cares about her, because heaven forbid we actually convey this information to the audience in a more natural way while characterizing him like they did with Maria. Seriously, why is he barely in this? Was Mike Pollock asking to be paid by the hour or something? Or does Gerald have no focus because he's clearly animated in 2D because time constraints or something? There is also this problem of cause and effect. Emerl blows up the weapons wing and then goes to Gerald's lab to assault him. Why did either of those two things happen? Who knows? You're gonna have to guess or read the wiki. Why does Gun show up in a bunch of ships in order to storm the Ark and destroy all evidence? Who knows? You're just gonna have to guess or read the wiki. Why did the Gun soldiers kill Maria? Who knows? You're just gonna have to guess or read. Why did Gun execute Gerald? Who knows? You're just gonna have to guess or read the wiki. Stories should not require you to do homework in order to understand the basic chain of events the story is built upon. As of right now, this animation is a string of unrelated events that are not properly tied to each other. This is and then storytelling. And if there's anything I can't stand, it's and then storytelling. What this should be is because of storytelling. Like, if I had to be put on the spot, Gun wants a super soldier, and because of that, they contract Gerald to make Project Shadow. But because Gerald's granddaughter, Maria, is sick, he tries to keep Shadow for himself because he feels he's the key to immortality in saving Maria. But because of that, Gun gets impatient and demands Shadow now. And because of that, Gerald bribes him with the Gizoid to get the government off his back. But because Gerald is a pacifist, he tries to install failsafes into Emerl. But because Gun wants their super soldier, they'll try everything they can do to undo the failsafes and resort to giving him a Chaos Emerald. And because of that, Emerl goes berserk. But because he overheard one of the soldiers talking about how much they despise Gerald and how much he's getting in their way, and Emerl has now imprinted on them, he attempts to fulfill their wish and kill Gerald for them. And because Emerl's display caught everyone's attention, Shadow arrives to stop Emerl from hurting more people. After that, because Gun has come to the conclusion that if they can get Gerald out of the way, they can have Shadow all to themselves, they use the Emerl incident as an excuse to shut down the Ark, steal all their research, and cover it up as an accident. And because Maria got in the way of capturing Shadow, she was shot. And because of Maria's death, Gerald snaps and creates his master plan and brainwashes Shadow into doing the events of SA2. There, I fixed it. Now yes, this is a dream sequence. It doesn't need to work in the realm of cause and effect. The point of the short isn't to be an exercise in making a realistic depiction of a dream sequence. It's to retell the tragedy of the Ark, a story that occurred in the non-dream world, the realm of cause and effect, he says, as if the plots of Sonic games and the entire chronology of this universe works in the realm of logic and not the realm of making things up as we go along. A prime example of cause and effect not working here? Why is Gerald's death scene before Maria's? That just gives off the impression that Gerald went insane and was killed, and then later Maria was killed. No layman is going to watch this and say,
"Oh, Gerald went insane because his granddaughter died, and these scenes aren't laid out chronologically."
What are you?
I'm the hypothetical. Your mind made me up for the purpose of inserting words into the mouths of your non-existent audience.
Hey, I have an audience. I just got 100 subscribers. But that's besides the point. How did you come to the conclusion that Gerald's death happened after Maria's without knowing the context of SA2?
Well, I am a creation of your mind.
Oh, right. Boy, I walked into that one.
So what would you have done differently?
I would have just changed the order of the scenes. Seriously, I could edit that right now.
Professor, we must...
The way it is now... Wait, where'd the hippo thing go? Anyway, the way it is now, we are shown the effect and then its cause, but then are given no context to inform us that's what's happening. It's very amateurish. I haven't even gotten to the embarrassing part yet. Like I said earlier, this prologue is for people who don't know about Shadow. people who have never seriously engaged with this franchise, to catch people's eyes with a visually spectacular animation that conveys the entirety of Shadow's tragic backstory in one easy-to-access place. A short film about Shadow reliving the events leading up to the most terrible and traumatic thing that has ever happened to him. So, it seems a bit weird to gloss over the small, tiny fact that Gerald brainwashed Shadow after the incident, forcing him to destroy the world against his own will, altering his memories to make him believe it's his own idea and what he wants. I don't know why you're under the impression that Shadow's actions in SA2 were completely of his own volition, Ian. It's not like Shadow is visibly conflicted whenever he's challenged in that game or anything. It's not like rhythm and balance implies Shadow has two conflicting voices in his head or anything. It's not like Gerald's diary entry after he lost his mind clearly states,
"Based on my original projections, I was able to complete my project, Shadow. I designed its mind to be perfect, pure. I will leave everything to him."
or anything. And if that last one wasn't convincing because SA2's English dub is so-so. In the Japanese version, he says,
"Based on the original diary, I have completed Shadow. I also completely control his memories. I leave everything to him."
Which is even more explicit than the English script. I know. We all love to clown on the scene where Amy jogs Shadow's memory, and he discovers Maria's wish wasn't to kill everyone, but to make them happy. Oops! And to be fair, the jokes and memes are pretty funny. But if you actually sit down and think about Shadow's actions, the scenes he's in, and the journey he has in SA2, clearly what Maikawa-san was trying to say was that this moment is when Shadow realized that he's been played, and that he never truly wanted any of this. That the father figure who he looked up to and believed in used him as a pawn in his mad plan to destroy everything. That's why he sheds a tear. Now, was this moment of SA2's narrative well written and conveyed?
No.
The problem comes with all of Shadow's dialogue revolving around talk of Maria's wish, when what Shadow should be proclaiming is that he's gonna start doing what he wishes to do, and not the desires that Gerald has forced onto him. Like I implied in my Sonic 3 trailer reaction/breakdown video, I love SA2's story more in concept land than in execution land. Honestly, this detail of Shadow's story is so widely misunderstood because Maikawa simply failed to communicate his ideas properly. But those ideas are in there. You just have to be completely obsessive about this franchise to figure it out and piece it together. I can completely get why most people joke that if Maria's wish was for him to work at McDonald's, he immediately would drop everything, ignore the world was about to freaking end, go to get a job interview there. Not everyone has the energy or time to obsess over deciphering poorly conveyed stories, but I will not give Ian the same grace because he is this franchise's head writer and lore consultant. It's literally in his job description to be as obsessive about this franchise as possible. He is supposed to be aware of every small yet important detail regarding everything. But it's abundantly clear that he does not realize any of what I've just talked about for some reason. He seems to think that Sonic, comparing Shadow's actions while he was possessed by the vengeful spirit of Gerald Robotnik, more quickly realizing what was going on and sacrificing himself to fix everything, is somehow completely comparable to Eggman's actions of consistently being evil all the time and refusing multiple chances at redemption. He seems to think that he just wrote a scene where Sonic totally owns Shadow with facts and logic on the values of redemption and forgiveness. What he actually wrote was Sonic doing an equivocation and being a massive, inconsiderate, emotionally manipulative. Sorry, I was going on a rant again. That said, I'm not saying that Shadow was 100% right about wanting to put Mr. Tinker in jail and throw away the key just because there's a chance that he could snap back into becoming Eggman. Even though it's exactly what ends up happening. But my goodness, why does Ian always feel the need to write Sonic like this?
That's no good.
Sonic wouldn't say or do crap like this. And the reason I am so freaking frustrated at Ian isn't because he's some terrible no-good writer who's ruined my childhood and he doesn't actually care about the franchise. He's clearly a fan. Heck, he's loved and worked on this franchise for longer than I have been alive. The reason I'm so annoyed is because he used to write the best Sonic stories ever. His run on Preboot Archie remains my favorite Sonic story ever told. His entire MO was overanalyzing the past and taking everything that did and didn't work, and he wove all of it into new narratives that didn't just reference things just because. No, he put in the effort to make everything count. He always made sure that he was always, first and foremost, telling a story. Every retcon he made led to the entire tapestry of the comic becoming more than the sum of its parts. And then his future plans for stories and the universe he was building were blown up by corporate incompetence twice. And it's like he doesn't really care anymore. Like his heart just isn't in it. Like the only reason he's still doing this is because he's typecasted himself as the Sonic writer and he needs the paycheck. And that's just depressing. Given I'm going to talk about this franchise more in the future, I'll have to talk about my thoughts on Ian's writing more as much as the topic exhausts me. But I've basically covered my general thoughts on the subject at this point. So, I wrote and recorded that entire section before I went down a rabbit hole, and it's safe to say that my opinion of Ian is not actually as rosy and apologetic as what I just went on about. So, next time, I'm not going to be as kind and understanding. My goodness, things I found out about. The gloves are off, man. Oh boy. My final critique is, oh my goodness, we're doing this again. I thought the entire point of Shadow 05's ending was that he was going to put the past behind him, but apparently not. The universe, or more accurately, the executives, won't let him move on. No, we spent so much time ignoring his past, we need to overcorrect and drag him back in. Okay, now, I'm not against the idea of making a story that fixes Shadow 05's mistakes, because that game's story was absolutely a mistake. But I question the wisdom of following up 05 by undoing all of it to bring Black Doom back from the dead, because no one's ever really gone. To do the same story again, but totally better this time. Disney tried that with the Star Wars sequels, and we all know how that ended.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
All I'm saying is that if we're gonna follow up on a story, it should be a continuation and not a rehash. But I admit, I'm being a bit presumptuous here. Maybe Ian finally snapped out of his Pender's lawsuit-induced funk and remembered how to cook what seems like a bad idea on paper into something fantastic again. We'll see. So, the overall verdict for episode 1? It's alright. I guess. It's a really big mixed bag, honestly. It's certainly a very big step in the right direction in many ways, but given the game franchise's current state, that's not exactly a high bar to get over. Literally, the bar has been subterranean for the past 14 years. But hey, that was just episode 1. We've escaped the past and we're going to whenever the present is supposed to be. That's not entirely clear. There's gonna be 2 more of these, and the stupid extended cuts on PS5, and a whole half a game. I'm going to have my work cut out for me, huh? If you enjoyed the video and were able to go through all of my Ian bashing, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.